I have a great job, and one part of that is the introductions I'm going to make today. If I were the president of the George Washington University Center for International Science and Technology, or the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, or the John Fitzgerald Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, I would not be able to introduce the presidents for whom those centers were named. However, G. Douglas Lewis is here in person today. And it's my pleasure to say a word about him as the celebrant, and then about Lovett Hayes Weems as the preacher today. Doug Lewis came here as the 9th president of Wesley at a time when the seminary had experienced great difficulties. They had 9 years of deficit budgets. And he served then for 20 years as president, bringing this institution back to health and putting it at the forefront of theological education. He brought to the campus as his vice president Lovett Weems, who was here then for several years before going to St. Paul's School of Theology to become president. In those early days, the center was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of leadership studies in the church because there was really nothing being written about leadership for churches or for seminaries. And I remember Doug brought to us, the us then became me. I was a student workship in the development office working for Lovett. And the three of us started reading books on leadership, and the first book we read was Robert Greenleaf's Servant Leadership. What a fundamental piece of work that has been for many people, particularly for those of us who seek to lead institutions. And then we began to read other books on leadership, always trying to ask, what does this mean for the seminary and the leadership of the seminary, but then what does it mean for the church? Because Doug Lewis moved us to see ourselves as a church-based seminary. Nobody was writing about that until later. Lovett moved on to St. Paul, and he started writing. Doug started writing. And over time, there started to be an idea for a center for church leadership. Nothing had existed like that. And yet there was this dream that started to come together. And then in 2001, just as the plane hit the Pentagon, we were starting to think here about what would it look like to have a center. And later in that academic year in the spring, a group of admirers of Doug Lewis who wanted to try to see if this could happen, put together the funds to start the Leadership Center. It's a mark of the success of the center that all of those funds are still intact. They took a leap of faith, and it proved to be true. And that's because Lovett Hayes Weems decided to come back and agree to be the first director of the center. Since then, the center has grown tremendously. At other times, you'll hear about all the things they accomplish, enough to say there is still nothing else close to it, indeed nothing else like it in theological education, as a center that helps the church be more effective. Lovett early on introduced a phrase that should measure everything we do as leaders. The phrase is a question or a statement, so that. Why are you doing this? So that, and then you have to fill in the answer. If you can't fill in the answer, don't do it. There was another person here that some of us were remembering this morning, Doug Cooney, who was Vice President for Administration, and he used to refer to administration as a ministry. He said it's the ministry of administration. And I thought about all that, and I thought about Greenleaf's book, and I realized we have here today, both as the person who brought this institution to where it is now, and the leader of the Leadership Center, two examples of servant leaders. And we read all those books and we did all that work not so that the institution would be healthy, but so that Wesley can help churches be more effective servants of the kingdom of God. And I think that's what we're commemorating today. So I welcome our two servant leaders to the chapel today, Lovett Weems and Doug Lewis.